lighting, action. Welcome to my new video where I'll be showing you the different cinematic lighting techniques that will elevate your cinematography. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the series. This is the series where I'll be making cinematography using different apps that are available out in the market and that a lot of people use. So the first app we use right now is Unreal Engine 5 and we're done. This is the last part of the series for Unreal Engine. But the next one will probably be Blender. More on this video. So as you read the title, it's about camera movement. What about camera movement? There's a lot of things that people do wrong when they start their CGI and camera movements. A lot of people, typically the most issues they have is setting their focus, and they don't know how to use the different various settings in your camera, such as aperture, focal length, and all of that. So I will be breaking down this video, and every about 2 minutes or so I'll break down the specific part of the camera and what it does and how you should use it and when to use it. So first, let's just start about the things that people do wrong when they first start creating their camera movements. So the first one would be is that their camera is going everywhere. They want to be focused on something. For example, they want to be focused on this. They have the camera like this. There's boom, 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 boom. You know, it's not very smooth. You know, or often some people will do whoosh, and that doesn't look very good either. You want to have more of a linear and smooth movement for your camera movements to achieve the cinematography. If you're going for cinematography, if you're doing something like commercials, that's a part of its own, but you typically want to be going for smooth camera movements. And there's a lot of different features that help you achieve that, such as camera shake, apertures, the focal length, and all of that. You put that together and you have a really good cinematography camera. So for this, I'm going to be making two cameras. First camera will have a very still motion with a little bit of camera shake. The second camera will be up close camera shot facing the face of the character. So let's start with our simple one, the standing still camera. Let's reset our rotation of our camera first. And then for this, I like to go over here and go to layouts, and let's do a double panel layout. So I'm going to center the hero in our frame, and then now let's turn up our focal length. So right here we have focal length. What is focal length? So focal length is like the perspective of your camera, how far it's zooming and how far it's not. Typically when you zoom in, you're not scaling. So a lot of people think that focal might be as you just scaling things up. It's not. You zoom in, it changes everything. So here is a video right here showing what focal length can do to your footage. That's focal length. And typically for cinematography, a lot of people prefer to use a higher value for their focal length, anywhere between like 35 over to maybe 60s. Personally, I like to stay in the 50s, but that doesn't mean you can't go over 65 or go below 30 or something. You can get great results using focal length of 25. Not everything has to be zoomed in, but typically when you're gonna use a higher focal length, this means that your camera is gonna have to be further away from your object, otherwise the object will be too close to your frame. So let's go to transform and let's put a keyframe over here. Let's go and let's put a keyframe. And then now if we hit play, you can see it just simply going to the character. It is not much right now, and we can actually drag these keyframes all the way to the end of the timeline. Alright, so now let's do some camera shake. Next is camera shake. So camera shake is really great. I love camera shake, but adding it too much can be really bad for your renders. So you have to apply your camera shake tastefully. Sometimes your renders will require you to add a lot of camera shake. For example, if we're having a meteor effect, you're gonna have to add a lot of camera shake to apply that intense shock of crash, right? So, but if you're having a more still camera, you typically want to have a little bit of as if somebody's holding the camera. Gives it a camera was in real life. Like what I did earlier with the desert biome in Unreal Engine, it looked more like as if I was in the scene recording the camera, which is actually what I did. I used my phone, and that gave it realistic camera shake instead of generated by noise. But sometimes you don't have the time to go in there and record the scene in your phone or camera, so you just add a simple Perlin noise shake. Right click, go over to Blueprint class. Let's go and search for shake. Go down to camera shake base and let's create one. And then over here, let's change it from none over to Perlin noise. Go over to timing and let's put this duration to 0 so that it never ends. Go over to location. Let's go down to, and let's drop all of these. All right, now we can go back to our timeline and let's add our camera shake. So for this, we're gonna click on camera component. Let's add and let's go down camera shake. Let's go up to camera shake and camera still shake. Before we continue with the shake, let's select our keyframes for the camera. Let's right click and change it to linear. All right, so let's now go back to our camera shake and let's start by changing the location amplitude to 2, changing our rotation to 1. Let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good, except I want it to be a little bit more still, less frequent. So let's tune down our frequency. I'm going to change it to 0.5 for both rotation and location. Let's hit compile and let's see what we get.
So now we're using aperture. Aperture works differently in CGI than it does on real life cameras. So typically in real life cameras, aperture will highly impact the brightness of your pictures that you get on your camera. But when it comes to CGI aperture, the aperture won't really affect much of the brightness and it will only affect the blurriness. When should you use aperture? Aperture should be used on close shots. It's just like right now, I look a lot better because of the aperture coming from my phone. The whole my background is blurry. It's more focused on me now instead of the background. This helps put your camera together. But if you're shooting something from afar, like watching a meteor fall, a car chase from afar, you don't have to use any aperture. You can just leave it be.
I'm gonna change the current aperture over to 1.5. And let's keep dragging the manual focus distance until it reaches our character. We might need to keyframe our distance, so it starts pretty blurry, and then the camera focuses on the hero. So that's it for our first camera. Let's start with our close-up camera shot. So for this, we will also need to make a camera shake. So let's go back to our old one. Let's Control D. So let's duplicate our original camera. Control D to duplicate the camera. Drop down on our close cam. Let's delete our camera shake. Let's delete our keyframes that we have here also. And for the close cam, I'm thinking of having the camera over to the side of the character, showing the car burned right next to him. And so we're gonna have the camera follow our character. So in order to do that,
So one of the reasons I'm getting my scenes ready and camera ready really fast is that I know what I'm going for my camera movements. Again, you want to have that reference. You want to have that vision in your head telling you, okay, I want to do this, this, and that next. You want to know what you're going to want to be doing for the scene. So you want to picture it already in your head, and that when you go to your camera, you know exactly where to put it and what angle you want.
let's click on our close camera. Let's go to add track and go to attach. And then this sequence, let's click our hero. And then we're gonna go to body. Let's hit our neck. Let's do neck 2. And then your camera is gonna teleport somewhere else. I don't know where. But we're gonna drop down to transform and we're gonna zero out our location. So I'm gonna reposition this. So now I have my camera in an angle that I like. Let's go now to our location. Let's keyframe our location at frame 1. Let's go all the way to the end. And let's move forward to the face of our hero. Let's select these keyframes, right click, and then let's put it to linear. And now if we play it, you will see it's gonna follow our character
and it's gonna zoom in. Let's actually change the attachment bone since the camera is shaking already from the character attachment. So let's right click our attachment, go to properties, let's change it, go down, and let's change it to head, and hit enter. That plays a lot better. So let's go back here and let's reposition our camera. And then now if we hit play.
So a really cool feature that is in Unreal Engine is called attach. You can attach your camera or anything, any object together in your timeline. For example, if I attach a sphere to a box, wherever the box goes, the sphere will follow. So when you want to use this for cameras, I would use this for when your camera is following something, such as a car cinematic, such as a car render, a meteor, an object, or your character if they're going at a fast pace. Or you can manually just keyframe your camera to move along with it, but that's a lot of work. I don't want to do that, and you don't want to do that.
Notice how everything in the camera is moving except the face. If you don't like this effect, you can just simply remove the attachment and attach it to something else in the character, and it will be focusing on that. Or if you don't want it to attach at all, you can manually move your camera. But I like how this is looking like, but let's still add our own camera shake on top of this, and it should help it look a lot better and smoother. So let's go over to camera component, let's add track, camera shake, and let's add our close camera shake. Let's go inside our close cam shake, and I'm gonna want this to have more amplitude than frequency. So I'm gonna turn up the amplitude to maybe like 2 on everything, and turn on the frequency to 0.6 on everything. And then I'm gonna leave the rotation amplitude at 1. Let's see how this looks. Let's actually bring the camera closer to our character at the end. At the first frame, what we can do is have our camera be looking at a different angle, and it switches over to our hero. So maybe we can have it looking up at the sky, the ground maybe. So here's how it looks after rotating the camera upwards. It doesn't look too bad, although I don't like here how the face of our character is not seen on our screen. Kind of ruins the whole frame. We're gonna reposition our camera on this frame to where our face of the character can be seen. Alright, so there we have it. That is 2 camera shots. Let me adjust one thing really quick. So the character looks pretty dark, and we can adjust that simply by going to the light we put on top of the character. Let's just bring it up a little bit right above the character, and let's rotate it down. You don't want to show the face of your character completely. You want to have that suspense in your scene. So now we're done with both cameras. And to choose which camera to render first, you want to go to camera cuts. Let's click this camera button and this sequence and choose which camera you would like to render first. For me, I will choose the still camera, and I'm going to render that first. So let's go over to our rendering settings, give you a quick overview of how I render. So I first delete our JPEG. Let's add a PNG, and let's go to our deferred, and then let's add a anti-aliasing. For the first one, let's keep that at 4. Second one, let's keep that at 100, and let's enable override. Go to output, choose where you would like to save your render sequence. So I won't get in depth into compositing renders, so we're just gonna add a couple effects, some cinematic bars, and a color grade. So let's do our quick simple color grade. First, we're gonna drag our reference. So let's first drag our reference, which will be the Batman, and I'm going to trim it to where I want it to be. So I want it to be like this, and then at the top, let's go to window, go down to workspace, and go to color, and then let's go to comparison view, and then on your timeline, drag your needle over your clip, and then let's hit apply match. Select your clip and click apply match. There we go. we have a pretty similar effect. You can notice that our fire doesn't look very realistic because I didn't change the resolution for the fire. You can change it if you would like. This is just for example. And this is really rushed. This is made in a couple hours. So some really important things that I didn't get to touch on in this tutorial are sound effects. And sound effects make half of your production. So in this case, we would want to add some cloud sound effects, fire, an atmosphere, and some ground walking. You add all that together and it makes it so much better. And that really puts it together. That puts your cinematic into action, and that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, contact me in the link in the description via Instagram, Discord, or Twitter. And yeah, that's it. Subscribe.